What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me again. In this video, I'm going to be documenting and sharing what I've learned in my effort to learn how to paint interesting cloud backgrounds. Basically, I've always been interested in painting fantasy scenes and sort of lowbrow pop surrealist type art, but I've never had the confidence to actually try it because all of my paintings before have pretty much been abstract paintings, and I've never really delved into the realistic stuff until recently. You know, I've talked about this before. This has all pretty much been inspired by the artwork of Craola Simkins. There are other artists like Mark Ryden. There's many others actually that I've been interested in, but I've always thought you had to use oil paint to achieve those effects. And once I discovered Greg Simkins' work, that sort of blew my mind and kind of changed my attitude and my approach to things. So in my mind, the first thing I need to do is start from the back and work forward. So I need to learn how to paint really cool backgrounds that I can then use to layer objects and different fantasy scenes on top of. And so, you know, as I'm starting here, the first thing I did was put down some slow dry gel. I'm working on Strathmore multimedia paper. I've been painting on paper a lot because it's cheaper than canvas, and it's a great material. It's totally archival and great. You can mat it, frame it, etc. But before I go to wood panels or canvas, I like to kind of work out my ideas on paper. It's just cheaper, and then once I kind of get a handle on things, I tend to take it to a canvas or take it to a wood panel if I want to explore that subject matter even more. So in this video, I've just been experimenting with sort of a wet on wet technique with acrylic paint, using two brushes, one brush to put down a color, and then the second brush that's a softer dry brush to blend the edges together. I really didn't have a good plan color-wise when I started. I just wanted to play with colors that I found interesting. And as you'll see, I started over on this probably 2 or 3 times, or at least covered up previous work 2 or 3 times, just trying to experiment, just trying to play. I ended up with a pretty decent dramatic sky, but it was not as subtle as what I had envisioned or what I had kind of wanted to make from the start. So some of the things I learned, one, I started with fluid acrylic paint and it was too wet. Didn't blend as well as I needed it to. I'm still learning this, obviously, but what I think I'm figuring out is that the consistency of the paint is really important in this type of painting. It needs to be, a balance of not too thick and not too fluid. It almost needs to feel like butter or cream. The window that you have to work on the paint is pretty fast, and I don't know if it's because I'm working on paper, even though I just sewed the background, but the slow dry mix was not keeping the paint as active as it should, or as I think it should. So you have to work pretty fast. I often don't really think about brushes too much. I just use whatever brushes I have on hand. But I have recently started investing in more expensive, nicer brushes. And I will say in this case, it absolutely did matter. I got much better results. This large filbert brush that you might see from time to time in this video. It's a Catalyst brush by Princeton. I don't think brand necessarily matters, but it's just a really nice brush. I don't remember how much I paid for it. It's definitely an expensive brush. If I can find a version of this, I'll put a link in the description. It made a big difference. Just the way it put the paint down, the way it blended the paint, it was really, really nice. And, I wasn't able to achieve as smooth of a background as I had in my mind, but I got much closer to that result using that brush specifically. I end up going with a much subtler approach for the last background, mainly because some of the objects I have planned to put on top of this background, I really want to pop off the background, and so I needed the background to be much lighter than what it was at the start. So I went with some white, more of a white sort of buff color, and just worked in some teal and a little bit of pink and tried to keep it fairly subtle. I think I could have made it even more subtle, honestly. I tend to overdo it with my color these days. So I think, in future attempts at this, I will be much more strategic, much more subdued in applying the range of colors. And I think that over time, I'm already getting better at blending. I didn't mention this before, but I would say the 2 words that kept coming to mind to me were smudging and badgering. I feel like just buffing and smudging and badgering the paint is where I kind of got the best results, and trying to blend all these colors together to make it look like an interesting, somewhat realistic cloudy sky. I'm going to start at the end of this video. I'm going to go ahead and add in one of the elements that I've been planning to add in, which was this sort of wise old mountain that's going to have like a face in the painting. It's just a start at what this painting is going to become. It's an image that I've drawn a bunch of times in my sketchbook, and I've kind of always had in my mind. I'll probably add more mountains to the background too, but I'm going to start with this one that is kind of just drawn out of my imagination, not referencing anything. And in the future, I'll continue to add details to this. I'll tone it. I'll potentially even put some mist over it. But it'll give you guys a little bit of a taste of where this painting is going to go. And again, this whole thing is practice, because I have a bunch of fantasy ideas in my head, and I'm trying to not copy Greg Simkins' work too much, but you have to kind of reference the artists that inspire you and learn from them. So I'm treating this like a learning exercise. I'm definitely not going to copy his work directly, but it's kind of similar from a subject matter perspective, and it's just putting fantasy images that I'm interested in, some of which are things that he paints, right? Birds and bugs and all that kind of stuff. I'm interested in that too. So I think over time, as I practice this and as I learn more and get better at it, the work will become hopefully more and more my own, and I can continue to try and put my own stamp on it, and that's the goal. But sort of the parallel goal is just to learn how to paint, to learn how to paint these objects and things that I care about and things that I'm interested in. So I guess to wrap this up, I'd be more than interested in what you all are interested in hearing about. What do you like about this kind of stuff? What do you want to learn about it? What resonates with you? Do you want to see a time lapse of this whole painting from beginning to end when I'm done with it? Do you like it more in these little bite-sized pieces where I'm showing you little elements as I'm learning and attempting this stuff? Do you want to see both? Like, that kind of stuff really interests me. It helps me have some sense of what's worth making, what kind of content people are interested in. So anyways, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. Oh, I do want to mention that in the coming weeks, I do have 2 more really cool videos of different subject matter animals, realistic paintings of a mockingbird and a magnolia tree and one of a cat. And I'm super excited to share those with y'all. I just wanted to tell you about it. They're not quite ready yet, but they'll be out soon. So I hope you'll come back and join me. And leave a comment. Let me know how I can make these things better. Peace. Have a good one.